You know that exact person who is clearly drowning under a mountain of tasks, eyes exhausted, completely running on pure fumes, and yet, when you ask them if they need a hand, they flash a quick smile and say, "No, I'm good, I've got it." There is a very high chance that person is actually you. And if it is, you probably felt a slight tightening in your chest just now, because that description hits a bit too close to home. It is the strange, almost defensive pride that shows up when someone notices you are struggling. You'd rather stay up until 2 a.m. solving a problem alone than endure the massive discomfort of admitting you cannot handle it. Let's dissect exactly what is happening in the brain when you lock yourself inside this hyper-independent trap, because it turns out your inability to ask for help has very little to do with being stubborn or arrogant. To understand this behavior, we have to look at how your nervous system logs early relational experiences. Your brain is an incredibly sophisticated pattern recognition machine that builds templates for survival when you are young. At some point in your past, you likely reached out for support during a moment of genuine vulnerability, and instead of warmth, you were met with emotional absence, irritation, or outright dismissal. Your brain registered that experience, not just as a disappointment, but as a threat to your emotional safety. It quickly updated its software with a new rule: needing people is inherently dangerous and leads to rejection. So, you adapted by creating a psychological shield where you became the completely self-sufficient one. You learned to suppress your own needs so thoroughly that you built an entire identity around never being a burden. The true tragedy of this adaptation is that the more capable you appear, the more invisible your actual suffering becomes to everyone around you. People gradually stop checking in on you simply because you have trained them to believe you always have everything perfectly under control. You walk around inside a heavy internal narrative that constantly tells you your problems are yours alone to carry. If a friend calls you at midnight in a panic, you will drop everything to help them because their pain feels entirely valid. But if you are the one staring at the ceiling at midnight, you will swallow your words because asking feels like a massive imposition. You tell yourself you will finally reach out when things get truly terrible, but your definition of terrible keeps shifting higher. This internal barrier feels like a factual truth, but researchers have proven that our brains are actually lying to us here. A landmark 2008 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by researchers Flynn and Lake exposed a massive cognitive distortion. They discovered that people systematically underestimate how willing others are to help them by nearly 50%. We carry a deep cognitive bias that paints the world as far more reluctant and heavily burdened than it actually is. Your brain treats a simple request for help as a high-stakes emotional transaction that threatens your worth. The logical mind knows a short conversation could fix the issue, but the nervous system treats it like jumping off a cliff. This dynamic creates a very specific, lopsided pattern inside your relationships and your closest friendships. You feel incredibly safe when you are the one giving, supporting, and listening, because giving keeps you safely behind a shield. When you are the helper, you hold the emotional remote control, and you never have to expose your own vulnerabilities. But it quietly builds an invisible ledger in your mind, where you pour out endless energy while secretly starving for care. Eventually, a quiet resentment starts to set in, because you feel completely unseen by the people you love. Yet you cannot bring yourself to say a single word, because asking for what you need feels entirely impossible. This occurs because of what pioneering psychologist John Bowlby described as internal working models. These are the foundational mental templates we construct during early childhood to predict how human relationships function. If your early environment taught you that love was entirely conditional on your performance, this model runs your adult life. It acts as a quiet background operating system, whispering that you only possess value when you are actively serving a function.
This deep conditioning is completely bulletproof to simple logic or reading inspiring self-help quotes. Telling an overfunctioning person to just rely on others is like telling someone with a severe fear of heights to just enjoy the view. If you are nodding along to this right now, I want to tell you something very directly. You are likely carrying an unexamined weight of grief for a younger version of yourself who had to grow up far too fast. That child learned that the only way to keep the peace was to have absolutely no demands at all. That old hyper-independent strategy was actually a brilliant way to protect yourself back then. But it was only ever meant to be a temporary bridge to get you through, not your permanent home. You do not have to keep proving your worth by acting as the emotional infrastructure for everyone else. Dismantling this deeply ingrained pattern does not mean you suddenly stop being a caring or supportive person. It simply means you begin to accept the radical idea that your own human needs are not a heavy burden. The shift does not happen through a massive overnight breakthrough, but through tiny daily microdoses of vulnerability. It looks like asking for a small favor, leaning into the discomfort and realizing that you survived the interaction. You are training your nervous system to understand that depending on people is a strength, not a dangerous weakness. The capacity to receive care is just as vital and mature as your beautiful capacity to give it.
You can watch the rest of this ongoing series right now over on our channel. Click the next video on your screen to keep exploring.